Well, hello, and welcome back to the Naked and Truth podcast. It is your host, Sari D, as well as your coach, and this week's episode is all about the weight that we didn't realize we needed to lose. This is perfect time for us to trim off the fat before we go into the new year, and it's not the fat that I think you're thinking of. The fat that I'm ready to cut from my life, and I hope you are ready to cut from yours, is the stuff that's really weighing us down. And I'm not talking about our physical weight. I'm talking about the people in and around our lives that hold us down. I'm talking about the way that we hold ourselves down and just the garbage that's in our life that we might need to cut off in order for us to really grow into our true potential in 2024. Now, we need to remember that if we want to do it different, then we can't keep doing the same thing. And that comes down to us really taking time to assess what went well for us this year, what didn't go so well for us this year, and what traits do we notice about ourselves that we find are holding us back or, really aren't habits or personality traits that serve us, right? I know that a lot of us cater too much to our emotions, and that's going to be one thing that I continue to work on in 2024. A strong person and a strong leader is a person who doesn't react in my eyes. So, my biggest is making sure that going into 2024, I'm focused on staying as calm, cool, and collected as possible so that I can continue to make the right decisions instead of allowing them to be influenced by my emotions. Now, I have come so far in regards to this, but I think that there's always room that we can continue to make. There's so many things out there that people allow to piss them off or, get them sad or upset, which really shouldn't have that power over them. And those are the things that I really want us to make sure that we're assessing this year. How many times have we allowed ourselves to get upset over something that we saw somebody post, the way somebody said something to us, or maybe the way that they didn't say something to us? There's a lot of responsibility that we put on other people for how we expect them to make us feel. But then we allow ourselves to continue to play off of our emotions. So we need to understand that we are the ones that are in control of how we feel, that it's completely okay for us to have all of the emotions, but we cannot make our decisions based off of them. And I know that we've talked about this in podcasts prior, but that's one big thing that I think us as a whole really need to look at in order for us to become more successful, to continue to climb the ladders that we want to climb, and also just allow us to be better people in our relationships. How many times have we allowed something so simple of our partner or spouse to piss us off and we shit all over the day when it really didn't need to be? It's one of those things where we need to take responsibility for how we're allowing other people to make us feel, because they aren't doing anything, okay? It's how we choose to react to things. The same thing goes in regards to how you're feeling like your relationships are going. Are you constantly in fights and strife with people? Or are you feeling like you're doing a good job listening? Are you feeling like you're doing a good job communicating? These are all areas that we can put focus on in 2024 that might need changing in order for us to not feel so heavy. Now, we need to understand that there isn't any way for us to be able to change other people, but there is a way for us to influence it. So I want to give this as a good example. Like, have you ever hung out with somebody long enough that you started speaking like them? Or I know that like some people who have gone overseas have ended up developing an accent depending on where they're at for however long they've been there, because they've been around people talking in that accent for so long that they take it on themselves. Or, like I said, living in different locations, some people use different descriptive words. All of a sudden, you're starting to talk like the people that you're around. Well, the same thing happens when it comes to shitty attitudes. Your shitty attitude can 100% rub off onto somebody else. And I really want us to be the kind of people who take responsibility for our mindset, for the way that we display our emotions, and if we're literally shitting our emotions all over other people. Because this in turn can end up coming back to bite you, okay? Because a lot of the time when we are upset and cranky and short with people, we are acting that way because we feel like somebody else has done something to us. And so we're feeling hurt, we're feeling misunderstood, and we are now portraying everything that we feel like that person made us feel onto someone else. And we cannot allow for us to be able to be this chain reaction, because that's what it ends up doing. Is it ends up pissing someone else off. It ends up giving someone else the permission to have poor behavior. And I've heard it way too many times all over the internet where it's like, if you're going to give me some type of energy, I'm going to give you that energy back. Well, if you didn't like the energy that somebody was giving you, why the fuck would you go and give it back to them? Okay. This is exactly what we don't want more of. So I really want for us to look at 2024 as not just a year of goals that we're going to achieve. I want to look at it as, what do we really need to lose in order to feel like we are on top of the world in 2024? There has been so much going on the last few years that has been downright depressing, stressing. You know, it's one of those things where we have to take responsibility in our character and for what we want in our life in order to make it happen. And with the fact that so many people still don't have the self awareness or the self responsibility to check themselves, we need to be those role models to other people and inspire other people to do their best. Because if you've always been somebody who's short and snappy in the morning, and even though you feel justified to be short and snappy in the morning, you know that it's affecting your relationship and you know that it needs to change. You do not need to be that person forever. And that is where I really want to make sure that when we're assessing what needs to come off of ourselves to be successful in 2024, that we're also assessing the labels that we're putting on ourselves. Because too often than not, we will label ourselves as, well, I'm just not a morning person, or I'm a cranky person in the morning. It's just who I am. Is it that you are just that kind of person, or are you choosing to be that kind of person, right? And the more that you're going to give yourself that justification through a label, the more you're going to keep feeding into it. And that's where I want us to really make sure that we aren't labeling ourselves as, anxious, depressed, stressed, that I'm just not a morning person. I'm just not a person who goes to the gym, maybe I'm an introvert, right? And I don't like to hang out with people, but you don't always have to be that person. And the more that you label yourself these things, the more you're going to continue to feed into them. Now, I'm not saying that you're not the kind of person who doesn't like to hang out with people, or that you're not actually anxious or going through bouts of depression, but you aren't that person. You do not need to be defined by that label, nor do you need to hold on to it, because holding on to it is going to continue to hold you back from who you're truly supposed to be and what you truly deserve. Okay. So if there's any type of limiting label that you have placed on yourself, that's some weight that we need to get the fuck out. Okay. I want you to assess the people that are in your life. Are they encouraging you to keep growing? Are they supporting your decisions? Are they checking you when you need to be checked and you're going the wrong direction, or you're spitting bullshit, or whatever it is? If they're not, you need to look at boundaries, because if the people that you're around are constantly making you feel poorly, you need to make sure that, hey, if I've done everything that I can to step up and be the type of person that I know is who I'm supposed to be, kind, loving, understanding, communicative, all of these things, then we need to make sure that we do create boundaries. Because if that person is weighing us down so much that it makes us want to stop being a good person or who we're truly supposed to be, this is where the weight gets too heavy and we're constantly feeling like we're being weighed down. So there's a lot of different ways for us to look at growth, aside from just saying that you are going to lose X amount of weight this year, or you're going to start going to the gym X amount of times this year. Like, what is the weight that's truly holding you back? Because as a personal trainer, I can tell you it's not generally that you don't know how to feed yourself and that you don't know how to move your body. Like, that's such a small part of it, because honestly, even a shitty program being followed consistently will bring results. Where we're running into the issues is the fact of there being a lack of self-awareness of not only who we are, but how we allow others to lead in our life. Because when we're around people who aren't goal oriented, who always talk about other people, who are constantly in a negative mess and just, spit that nasty negativity out all the time, that's going to wear on us, and that's going to start dragging us down as if it's extra weight that we need to carry, and it's not. So, we can only inspire people to change for so long before we need to close that door. We don't need to reciprocate with the same attitude and energy that they choose to have. But what we do need to do is make sure that we're self-assessing ourselves, that, hey, are we acting out right in this situation? Or is the person who we feel offended by actually being the perpetrator here? It takes a lot to see if you're the issue first, because naturally we want to point fingers at other people. But so much of the unhappiness that we currently have is because of traits that we continue to feed. Okay. We allow those traits to keep getting fatter and fatter and fatter until it gets to a point where it weighs us down. And this is the weight that I am talking about losing. Okay. It's something that we are 100% capable to do, but we need to make sure that we're looking at it in the right manner. So if you are starting to do some goal planning over the next few weeks as we are heading into 2024, I think that that's great. But I think that we also need to remember that we don't need to wait until the first day of the month to make that change. Because what if something comes up on the first day where we're actually kind of hungover? We're not feeling really motivated. We're feeling like, there was a fight maybe on New Year's Eve, and now we're pissed off and we don't feel like doing what we said that we were going to. Well, let me tell you that motivation is not always going to be there. That's where we need to understand that determination and discipline, that self-discipline, is what is going to breed the action. And once we take that action, then that's going to breed the motivation. So starting right now on recognizing, hey, yeah, these are some behavior patterns that I'm not really loving. Hey, these are traits about myself that I recognize aren't serving me, my future goals, or my relationships. Or, hey, I'm really noticing this about the people in my life, that there's a common theme, that we actually don't have a lot in common aside from the fact that we've known each other for a long time, and that they don't make me feel good. I don't necessarily love our conversations. All they ever do is want to talk about other people. Like, these aren't things that we need to wait until January 1st to start making moves on, okay? Because the more that you wait, the more you're going to give yourself permission to look for this perfect time. And there is never going to be a perfect time for us to change. And that's why I want this change to be so much deeper than just the goals that you want to achieve, because all of this extra weight is what is going to be affecting you achieving these goals. So I want to make sure that you take a clear look at yourself to see, how do I need to change in order to be a better me? How do I need to change in order for me to start taking these steps towards my goals? Because the main step isn't necessarily going to the gym. Maybe it's about flipping your mindset as to speaking kindly to yourself and saying, hey, I'm not going to shit talk myself anymore. And I'm going to start changing the way that I speak to myself so that I have more encouragement to go to the gym, instead of telling myself that I'm a lazy piece of shit and I don't deserve this anyways. Might as well just stay on the couch. Because I know a lot of you guys out there talk some serious smack to yourself that you would never say to somebody else. And That's the behavior that I want to see change. That's the weight that I want to see lost going into 2024. So I hope that this inspires you guys to really recognize that things that we want for 2024 go so much deeper than just some of these baseline goals that we hear over and over again as a New Year's resolution. A lot of what we need in order to propel us forward is weight cut from our life. And sometimes we are the ones that are feeding it the most without realizing it. And that's where I want us to stop, check ourselves, start developing that self-awareness skill set, because it genuinely is a skill set that you can develop. And that's exactly like transforming your mind. Is it hard to do when you've programmed yourself to talk shit all the fucking time? Yeah, it is going to be hard, but it's not impossible. Okay. So for every time that you have a negative thought creep back in and you're like, fuck it, this is exhausting, I am just a piece of shit, I want you to realize how many times you've told yourself that. Okay. How many times have you gotten mad at yourself and just talked shit that you didn't deserve, but you thought that it felt good, but that feel good isn't actually propelling you to feel good and make good choices. It's allowing you permission and justification to continue making poor decisions. So you are able to reprogram these things, but it is going to take some time because you have been so accustomed to doing these things for so long that you need to put in those repetitions to make that switch. And sometimes we get so involved in just physical goals that we don't realize that it's the mental goals that are going to bring forth those physical shifts for us. So I want to inspire you guys to do your goal planning differently this year. What is it that you need for your health, your wealth, your relationships, and I want you to break down the relationship side into personal relationships, business relationships, and then your partner relationships, family relationships. There are so many different areas that we can assess because they all bleed into one area, which is us, right? And there is a shift that we can make in order to bring more prosperity to all of these areas. So when you go and do this actual planning, I want you to think back on this year to some of your hardest moments. I want you to think about what you could have done differently in how you showed up, in how you acted/reacted, and in how you chose to hold on to these things, or if you simply let them go, which is what we need to do a lot of the time. If you're struggling with forgiveness, that's another big trait that you can work on. And I promise that the forgiveness is going to give you so much more than it ever will your perpetrator. But we don't need to hold on to these things that are weighing us down, making us feel uncomfortable, and stopping us from showing up to be the people that we're supposed to be. So as we ring in this new year, I encourage you guys, let's do it different. I want you to be successful. And in order for us to be successful, there has to be a level of responsibility that we're willing to take in regards to how we act, the things that we say, and how we choose to lead our lives and inspire others. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be perfect, but if you are currently feeling stuck, you don't have to stay there. And I think that a lot more of getting out of being stuck comes from within than we recognize. Even if you feel like, other people have treated you like shit, so on and so forth, I feel like you probably need the most amount of work internally, because there are things that you need to be able to take responsibility of as to why you're feeling this way, why you're allowing people to treat you a certain way, why you're choosing not to put up boundaries. Okay, all of these are such important points. So I am going to leave this episode here. And I hope that you guys take out your notepad, really break it into those pillars that I discussed: your health, your wealth, your relationships, and the subcategories of your relationships, your friendships, your partners, your business relationships, your family. And then also making sure that you feel aligned with how you're acting, because sometimes we say things and we do things and we're like, I don't even know where that came from, but we continue to give ourselves permission to do that. Or, maybe you're the kind of person who's constantly making up excuses and you're spending more time sitting there thinking of an excuse of how you can get out of doing whatever, or giving yourself permission to skip out on whatever responsibility you know that it is that you need to get done. And in the time that you're wasting, you not only could have already gotten the task done, but now you're just breeding that type of mindset where you can constantly just say no and give up. So the only way for us to change is to really recognize where we need to change, stop doing what we're doing, and do the opposite of what we're currently doing in order to get new results. So I hope that you guys are excited for a new year. Next week is already Christmas. I cannot believe it. And we are going to get back into the schedule of podcasts dropping on Mondays. It's going to be a guest speaker interview where we are talking all about confidence, hair loss, natural products, and it is not one that you're going to want to miss. I just want to thank you guys for tuning into this podcast. And I do actually just want to throw something out where if you are a podcast editor, or if you know of any podcast editors that you think would be a good fit for the Naked and Truth podcast, I want you to send me an email to Sarah, SARAH, at AuthenticallyFit.com with the information of the editor or of yourself, what you do for your business packages, so that I can assess an editor for the podcast. Okay. It's time for Sarah to start pulling out of her responsibilities of doing it all in 2024. I really recognize that that is an area that I should have potentially reached out for sooner, is asking for help on some of these back end things. Okay. I am a skilled person, but I don't have to be skilled in it all. And I want to be front of camera with you guys, doing all of the talking, not all of the editing and the back end, so on and so forth. And maybe that's a good lesson for somebody else listening too, is maybe you're also the kind of person who is trying to do it all and recognizes that in order for you to grow, you need to be able to let go. So this is type A personality Sari saying, I am going to let go. I am going to grow. And if you know of an editor, hit me up. Okay. So that'll conclude this episode. And you know that I will catch you next week.